Today on the podcast, we have Rick Shew from the podcast Friends from Work, Let's Chat. This is a pop culture podcast where he, Bryan Chatlien, and Courtney discuss all things pop culture. And it's really like hanging out with your friends, talking about your favorite shows, if your friends are very articulate, smart, and in the know on all the behind the scenes of your shows. So I hope you enjoy. On another note, this podcast is a passion project, work in progress. So we're really working to up our technology game. Thank you for being here with us. We're going to do some more stuff on the YouTube side and hopefully more editing on the videos. So thank you for being here. We decided to start this because we thought it would be more fun to talk about art and business and culture versus your comp and collision deductibles. So you're welcome. But I hope you'll go to gibagencydallas.com to check us out and let us give you a quote and give you more content. So now, on with the show. So I have questions, actually, since I've listened to your podcast, Friends from Work, Let's Chat. Because you guys do a deep dive onto The Mandalorian, which I'm so confused. Is The Mandalorian set? Which shows is The Mandalorian set between? Help me.
Well, The Mandalorian right now, I think the best way to put it, if you think about the sequels,
yes.
Rey, who eventually becomes Rey Skywalker, is a little girl. If she's born, yeah, she's probably born. She's a little girl. Poe is a little boy. Finn is probably not born yet. Well, I don't know. I think he's probably actually older than Rey now that I think about it. He was a stormtrooper. He's probably a little dude somewhere. So if that helps,
okay.
right?
Yes.
So Luke's appearance in Boba Fett, which is essentially, let me put my phone, turn it around here. It's all tied in together with the Mandalorian. Obviously, it's all overlapped, and that's, the Mandalorian is where Boba Fett was reintroduced anyway, technically. So it's all post, like, Empire has fallen, Emperor is dead for now, Vader's Anakin again as a Force Ghost with Yoda and Obi-Wan, they're off doing Force Ghost stuff. So it's in that time period. So in fact, what's happening right now in The Mandalorian is that you're seeing the seeds really build for the First Order. And particularly this last episode, it really hit it on the nose. So the sequel trilogy is really tying in to all this stuff.
That was pretty.
Hope that
it
helps.
does, but that was pretty cool when I was going through and listening to your podcast, because I know it's about pop culture and shows and all fun things like that. But it was all kinds of deep dives into this show that I pretty much just watched with my kids. But I was like, oh, they're demilitarizing over here, and this is going to answer this question in here, and it's going to answer this question in here. How do you decide what shows you're going to talk about?
Well, that's just it. That's funny. And I'll say this, on our last episode of Friends from Work, I had Pete Fletcher from Around the Galaxy. Brilliant Star Wars mind. Like, the guy knows his lore more than I do. And he and I had an in-depth discussion about this very thing that you're talking about is, has Star Wars, are they getting a little carried away with expectations for their audience? So right now, if you don't know Rebels and Clone Wars and a lot of this animated stuff, you can be lost. And so my advice to everybody is, like, don't sweat that. Don't worry if this particular character has been introduced in animation and there's this backstory. Just don't even worry about it right now. Just watch the show, and hopefully they're introducing the characters properly where that won't matter. It's just hard for me to be able to say one way or the other because I'm so in it that I'm going, what is the layman Star Wars fan that's just watching it for entertainment? Which, by the way, is 90% of the people that watch this stuff. People like me, we're a minority within a minority within a minority. We have these microphones and Twitter, and we talk about it, and we can sometimes control the narrative, but we're not the vast majority of people that go see these movies. And so that's something that I think Lucasfilm has on their hands, and they need to kind of watch and just make sure that, it's not supposed to be heavy homework, right? It's a space opera, but there's obviously a lot of history going on. So now to answer your question in terms of what we choose to talk about, I would love to sit here and tell you there's some kind of strategy to this, but there's three of us that host the show: Bryan Chatlien and Courtney, fellow actors, by the way, hence the name Friends from Work. That's where it came from. It's a Thor reference from Marvel, but we all met through acting, and there you go. Anyway, right now it's more just like, you guys see this? Let's talk about it. Star Wars Celebration, the Oscars, like whatever. And it just, things are just coming at us so fast. I'm just kind of grabbing things. Anything for me that's Star Wars or Batman, DC related, I gravitate towards that naturally. So, and I keep telling myself every week, all right, let's do a show on, let's talk about Tarantino's filmography. Let's deep dive into, Scorsese or whatever, Meryl Streep's career. And I have all these ideas, and I get sucked into Star Wars stuff every week.
Are you looking for the Star Wars audience? Is that part of the process? Or are you just having a good time?
A little bit of both. So I spent so many years over at Batman on Film, and a decade, 8-9 years. And I launched over there what we call the BOF satellite show, and it was mine for a while. They're still doing it, which is great for them. And essentially what that show was is what Friends from Work is. It was just an all-encompassing pop culture show. And so we had a license to talk about things. So people are like, well, why are you talking about Star Wars on Batman podcast? I'm like, well, first of all, Burger King has a chicken sandwich. That was a go-to line of mine. Secondly, it's a satellite show, right? That's hence the name. So really, at the end of the day, that's what this show is I just wanted a show that we could just kind of geek out on and talk about whatever we wanted to talk about. But to your question, on a subconscious level, I also understand that to build an audience, there has to be some consistencies. So I want people to want to watch me in particular give Star Wars analysis, give Batman analysis, because that's my passion. Then Courtney is really awesome with her Disney knowledge, I'm talking Disney as a whole, and I think that'll ultimately be her strength on the show. I say ultimately meaning that she wasn't on another podcast for a decade before this, right? So she's new to it. She's great. And then Bryan is, man, the guy just kind of knows a little bit about everything, enough to be dangerous, and he can talk about anything pop culture. They both can. So, trying to capture an audience that is an all-encompassing show can be tricky, and I need to watch myself getting myopic. Is that the right word? Where I'm talking pretty much just about Star Wars and Batman only. We'll see. You need to think of a topic and let me know. You come on the show and let's talk about your favorite pop culture thing. That'll help me. That'll help me break the Star Wars Batman rut I'm in right now.
Well, and Bryan is a great foil for you on the most recent one that I listened to. Actually, it's not the most recent one because I'm behind on The Mandalorian. But Bryan is a great foil for, or opposite of you, I think. And he does provide some really interesting feedback, expertise, insight. It's just nice to have that other perspective. And he did mention The Last of Us, which I think is an opportunity. I'm not The Last of Us expertise, but you are watching Pedro Pascal in The Mandalorian, and fans of The Mandalorian are also loving him in Last of Us, which is, anybody who's played that game, there's so many cool things in there. Do you guys sit down before the show and do any planning, or do you literally just show up and go, let's go? I mean, because you guys have known each other a long time.
This is true. And it's with those guys, with Courtney and Bryan, both for that matter, I probably should do that a little more. But I will email topics and say, let's talk about these things. But I like to let things just kind of roll, especially when it's our co-host. Like, who gives a darn if it goes off the rails a little bit? It's us. We're not guests of each other, right? And our job is to help bring each other back when one of us goes too far one way anyway. So, yeah, we do. And we've gotten a little better at it. Courtney is real big on that, actually. I don't want to put words in her mouth, so maybe I shouldn't say real big on that. But she's far more strategic. And she introduced this thing to the show where we're doing this top 5 pop culture countdown of the week. It's really great. It's got to be fine-tuned. I don't know if it's in the right place in the show yet, or we need to have some audio or some visuals with it. It's all a work in progress, but the intention is on the money, and it's fun. It's fun when she does that and she recaps. And so I've been trying to incorporate that on my own shows, but it's also weird. We're balancing out having a podcast and then having the YouTube platform. And sometimes they're one and the same, right? Sometimes YouTube is just the video version of the show, of the podcast. And sometimes I just want some YouTube content up that's really just for YouTube. It doesn't necessarily need to be turned into a podcast, just a trailer drops. Hey, let's just fire it up and get some people on the show and just talk about it for 10 minutes and then bounce. in those instances, doing the top 5 and really strategizing what wouldn't work, because the whole point is to be spontaneous. And let's face it, we are trying to build an audience. And oftentimes in these situations, you have to strike while the iron is hot, right? Like right now, this is trending on Twitter. People are talking about it. Get content up, even if it's just 5 minutes, just to get people to come to your show and hear what you have to say, and then you can kind of catch them, and hopefully you keep them there. So I'm trying to balance that out as well. Like what's the difference in the YouTube and the podcast? And with Courtney, she's very good at like making sure those things are coincide more than I do. So that's a work in progress on my part. It's just a work in progress, period. I mean, we're brand new.
You have what, 8?
We're on
8
in terms of the actual official podcast, and then we probably have 6 or 7 other just random videos up of just stuff that's not converted to a podcast. So it's still new, but it just gets better. And eventually, what we're gonna do is I want it to where on the second week of every month that Courtney's hosting her thing, and then Bryan's hosting his, and I've got mine that I host, and I'm hoping the recipe for success is that, hey, I want to hear what Courtney has to say about this thing, so let's tune into her show. Ooh, I want Bryan's analysis on this. I want to hear what Rick has to say about, Boba Fett or whatever. And that's kind of my dream with this. And I think we got the recipes there, right? So we're just kind of simmering right now. We're figuring it out, but I really have. I'm not thinking this thing's going to be some kind of life changer and we're all going to retire on it. Although that'd be awesome. I just want this thing to pay for itself, to have an audience, and us just have fun and celebrate fandom, because the toxicity of fandom is poisonous. I don't know if you're kind of privy to that, but like the underbelly of Twitter, Facebook fandom is like more toxic sometimes than politics, and that's quite literally true. I can say that firsthand.
Let me pause here, because I'm not on Twitter. I honestly don't think I'm funny enough to be on Twitter, and there's just one more thing to manage. So when you talk about the toxicity of Twitter, what was the other one you said? YouTube?
Yeah, so anything, I just call it online fandom. Anything that's anything that someone can log into and oftentimes be anonymous. And
is it just
you go to
like trolling? Is it similar, or what do you?
Yeah, I would say that it is. And like there's such a weird hateful element to this sometimes. And so I don't want to go down this rabbit hole. In fact, it's what we're trying to be antithetical to, right? But and I don't want to get political on your show here. But like the new Star Wars had a lot of diversity, had a lot of strong female leads that just weren't Leia, like one random, which was awesome as she was and revolutionary she was. And as a result of that, it's a lot of like it's woke, it's feminist agendas, it's not just. I mean, it's a lot of it, and it sometimes can it's like, man, this is supposed to just be fun. Like, if this becomes a source of stress and anger and animosity, and this is supposed to be the escapism, we have no hope. Like, Star Wars is supposed to be an escape from all that stuff. It's not supposed to be the root of it.
No, Star Wars is supposed to be fun. Just fun.
Right. Fandom. And that's the whole purpose of this show, is let's just have fun. That's it. Everything else we can fine-tune and all that. We got all the talent in the world to do it, especially with those two. And I'm the idea guy. They're the what's the word I'm looking for? They're the people that I think are people are really going to want to watch as them, and I know that. That's why I begged them to do it with me. So, but at the end of the day, if we're just having fun, that's all that matters.
I mean, you have the same amount of children that I do, which is about 4,000. And how do you find time to watch this, or do you watch it with them?
Well, and I, collectively have 5 now.
It feels like 4,000, though. I know. I got 5.
Yeah, it does. It does. But like with my stepkids, they have a very, very active, hands-on father. So I'm not, I'm not having to play their dad or anything like that. But I'm still in their life, and they're still around, and I'm still have responsibilities with them and whatnot. And same with Jen and my girls. But to answer your question, none of them are really into Star Wars. My oldest stepson is maybe a little bit. We'll talk about it. My girls, Hadley and Harper, loved Rey. So, so that was cool. But they rewatching them, not really so much, and not really into The Mandalorian. So I'm kind of on my own on these shows. Now, a Star Wars movie comes out in the theater. That's different. Everybody will go see that together, right? We all go see when we get all 5 kids together. It's first of all, it's amazing, and when we do, we almost always go to a movie and we'll see Spider-Man or whatever showing, and it's so awesome, and everybody's on board for that. Like no complaints. Let's all go see Spider-Man. So we'll see Star Wars movies when they start coming back out again, but Disney Plus shows, I'm running solo. me on the couch, or sometimes the cover's over me and I'm watching it on Disney Plus on my phone in bed. Yeah, I'm kind of on my own on that. What about you? I mean, you guys, do you still have your? I've been to your house. It's lovely. Your usual suspects, right?
We do. We still have our usual suspects, although none of the kids know it or know what it is.
They don't know.
No, they have no idea what the movie is, or that we're in a lineup, or, but the tight crew that it was.
I think you and I need to do a podcast on Usual Suspects, and then they can listen and they'll understand.
They'll be like, whatever. It's old, Mom. It's old. He's old. So.
Wait, they're using a payphone? That's so ancient.
Like, what is that thing? We don't even know.
Or not even a payphone, just a flip phone is like, archaic to them. It's hilarious.
Yeah. So this podcast, we talk about, it's fun. Star Wars is fun. It's very different from your other podcasts. You have a political podcast currently, Left Through Politics. And I know that gun violence is a big issue for you, but are both podcasts outlets for you? Because they seem very different. They've got very different audiences. You're not even looking to cross those audiences, are you?
No. In fact, I try not to, because I don't, as politically charged as I am, I've got this thing internally, and I never want to lose it, where for the most part, unless someone's actually racist or something, then that's entirely different. That goes beyond politics. That's just you're just a bad person. But people with just different political beliefs, I can shut that off in friendships and let's just not talk about it. And some of my best friends are very different ends of the spectrum and support certain people that I have disdain for, and et cetera. We just don't talk about it. So I want to just get that on the record, that I don't let it cross over into my personal life. I used to, but I don't anymore. It's not worth it. And I'm not going to not love people because I feel like their political beliefs are misguided, and I expect the same from them. But to answer your question, no, I don't. The political thing was on a hiatus for a while, and we're in the middle of rebranding it and renaming it. And I know there's Barstool Sports, but we're calling it Barstool Politics. We named it without even thinking about that, but we're not going to let them have that. They don't own that. Like Barstool, to us, we're changing the name to get rid of the left for a lot of the reasons I'm talking about, to make it also so much more inclusive. Like, I don't want it to be we're these left-leaning liberals or something. Like, how about we're just Americans that have our certain things that we really care about that are important to us. Let's pull up a chair. Let's literally have a beer, and let's talk about this stuff. And that's really the goal with that. And so I think the name change is going to really be helpful and healthy, because having left in there already, like,
yeah,
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's already this contentious statement. The thing was originally called Left Shew Politics, and it was like that for about a year or so. And it was just a joke. Somebody was like, and I used to put a lot of politics on my personal Facebook page. One of my mom's friends said, "Why don't you start a Facebook page and call it Left Shew?" I was like, brilliant.
Yeah.
That's a great name. And then I did, and I brought on 2 friends, and then we kind of be partners, and then we changed it to Left Crew, launched the podcast. But then here we are all these years later, and I just want to drop it. I want to drop that name, and I just want to talk politics and things that matter, and have people from all walks of life come on. And I've done it in the past, and we're going to continue to do it, and we're going to really ramp it up here pretty soon.
So it should be fun. I had a pastor on my podcast last week, and he was a lovely man. He had lost his hearing at a very young age. Didn't sound like it, though. He had really amazing voice training. You could barely tell that he can't hear his own voice. But it was interesting asking him about how different pastoring is, because he's been a pastor for 40 years. But he's like, the division between people, like, we've got to love each other despite our differences. And it gives me a little bit of hope that maybe the more people talk about bringing it back to the middle, and let's talk about things with other people that we may not agree with. maybe we can find Star
That's right.
Wars as our common ground and then talk about things that, I don't know, religion, politics, things you're not supposed to talk about.
And when you really get down to it, and what I've noticed is I had this gentleman, Dr. Doug Frederick. He's a, what do you call an eye doctor?
Ophthalmologist?
I'm
It's
so lame at it.
ophthalmologist or an
Thank you.
optometrist, and it depends on their level of schooling.
Well, he has his own practice in Manhattan, so I'm assuming he's the upper
Yeah.
tier of that, just by virtue of his practice. But big time Trump supporter. I've had him on twice. The first time I had him on, we yelled at each other a lot for 2 hours, and it was good rock and roll radio. But I was like, if I have him back, how do I approach this a little differently? And he came back, and what I said to him, I said, let's find common ground in something, and we're going to end this episode talking about that thing for 10 minutes, not politics, and like to send that message out. And he was to give him a lot of credit, he was a big sport. We had a fiery debate. It was a lot better than the first one. It was more grounded and more mutual respect than the F you and, oh, give me a break and all that. I'm not saying there was a little bit of that, but it was also, you got a Texan and a New Yorker. Our personalities are very similar. People don't realize that, but they are. But we talked about Stevie Ray Vaughan for 10 minutes.
Oh, nice.
In music, in blues in general, really, but our love for Stevie Ray Vaughan. And I thought, okay, we need a little bit more of that on the show and a lot more of that in the world, right? To your point, like, we're more alike than the politics will lead us to believe.
I agree.
Our similarities are bigger than our differences.
Well, and I was never uncomfortable with some of the hate that got spewed on my page when I would post something that they would disagree with. But you've never really seemed uncomfortable with a fight, but this is a mellower version of Rick Shew than I think I've seen in a long time. I have known you a very long time.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. It's age, right? It's age and wisdom, and also just it's strategy too. Like, even with politics, for instance, same thing we're talking about now. Like, you asked me 5 years ago, do you want a neutral political name? Like, hell no, left, liberal. And that part of me is gone. Like, I don't think that way anymore. I don't want to be tribal. I mean, what I believe, and there's certain things I believe very passionately about, and that will be contentious with people that are opposed to those, especially when it comes to things like gun violence and whatnot. But no, it's just not worth it. Plus, I want to be here. I had kids late, so I'm not going to be a grandpa anytime soon. Knock on wood, not going to happen. So, I want to be here holding grandkids when I'm in my 80s, and that level of like, because it's stressful. It's stressful to be that pissed off or to be that passionate. I had an old business partner, who's also one of my best friends, and we grew up together, Joe Cleveland, and he knows me. The only person on the planet knows me better than Joe is Jen, but Joe knows me in a way that a lot of people don't know me, because he knew me when we were in third grade. He knew me in junior high. He knew me in high school. He knew me in our 20s. We owned a bar together. We ran steakhouses together. We were in business together. So it's like we were in each other's weddings. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's a unique friendship. And I've got friends like Mike Stewart and others. I don't want to name drop everybody here that I've known as long, if not longer than Joe, that are just as close to me. I just mean with Joe, it's a very unique friendship because of the different levels of things that we've done together. You don't own a bar with every best friend that you have. And so he said to me one day, he said, this was years ago, he said, your problem is, he said, in your personal life and your professional life, man, you ride the highs and you ride the lows. I need you to coast, dude. You got to coast. And he meant that in my personal and professional life, everything. And he may not realize this, but that advice, it didn't happen overnight, but it played in my head for years and years and years. And it just slowly, I kind of like got it. I was like, nah, I get what he's saying now. He's right. Like, let's not ride the highs and ride the lows so much. Because if you ride the highs, where's the only place you can go is you're going to crash. And then when you crash, then you're crashed and burned, and then you're at that level for however long.
I feel like I rode the highs and lows a lot more when I was acting.
Did you?
because it's the high of booking the job, it's the low of not booking the job, the times in between. And the farther I get away from it, the more I feel like I'm in the middle a little bit. Like I feel like I'm coasting, and I do feel a lot overall happier, even though I don't have those big highs. Are you doing much acting right now?
Well, first, let me just say this. I want to
Okay.
answer that question. But one of the things when I met you, and I hope you don't take this as a backhanded compliment and certainly not an insult. It's not. It is a compliment. But you were intimidating because you were. We met. I believe we actually met on the set of Falling Hard, right?
Hmm. I think so.
That's where we met. I think
Dude,
we
we've
met.
known
We
each
might
other
have
so
met
long.
once or
It's so
twice
weird.
before
You
that.
don't even remember how you met.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was
But I think it was Falling
90.
Hard.
Well, but probably. So this is
Hmm.
1999,
Hmm.
2000,
Hmm.
somewhere in there. And you always seemed, here we were, a bunch of knucklehead actors, men and women, and we were all flighty and and you walked in the room and you would speak and you would have your thoughts and your opinions and talk about a scene. I'm like, well, she's like a old soul. You were to me, you were never that flighty, goofy in the clouds actor like we all were. And I swear to God, I'm not just saying this now. Like that was my impression of you, and it stuck. And then over the years, when I got to know you, we became friends and everything. I thought, that's what I love about you is that you're first of all, you're consistent, but I don't know, there's something about you that's been different than all the rest of us in that acting world. And so I know this is your show, so forgive me for trying to interview you, but a little bit force of habit. I'm also just genuinely curious. Why are you not acting anymore? Does it have anything to do with that? You're just kind of over it, or what's going on
Um,
with you? Because you're also
all right,
really
I'm going to do a
talented.
real short answer. Thank you. You're very kind. Because I want to get back to you. Um, COVID
Okay.
really changed everything, a lot of things. I've been slowly doing less and less work because I have kids and I want to be there and I want to be grounded for them. But, Joe had a job this past week on The Chosen, which is an amazing production. He had a great experience, but he was sitting
Oh,
down with David Carney and some other guys who've been doing it for as long as he had. And he was like, it was so nice. It was different than when we were younger. And we were all like, well, I'm doing this and I'm doing this. He's like, we just sat down and we had a conversation about how hard it's been since COVID to find work, to keep work, because you're not in the room, you're not auditioning anymore. Um, so, I mean, the short answer is COVID, really. But I also don't miss, and I had a job recently, and I waited around until 8 p.m. for somebody to come and tell me that I would be on set at 7 a.m. in Arlington, and what was going to be a half day was in a full day, and then I'm scrambling to find somebody to pick up my kids, and I was like, I don't miss this part. I just don't miss it.
that part
Yeah.
sucks.
But I do
That part
carry a ton
sucks.
of the things that I've learned in acting into my professional world, like
Mm-hmm.
active listening, play the opposite, which is one of my personal favorites.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you miss it? Do you keep it with you? What's where you at with it?
So, so I do miss it now. In 2019, I got back into it, and it was a fun year. I didn't book anything, but like I was reading for Better Call Saul, and I kept getting called back in. And Linda McAllister was like, "Rick, they love you. They want to read you for this part," and they were treating me like the character actor that I am. And that was such an amazing experience. And then 2020 hit, and COVID, and everything else, and I just never got back into it. And then Jen and I met in late 2020, and meeting her, like I can't even tell you how amazing she has been to my life. And one of the first things she said is, "Why are you not acting anymore? And why are you not really podcasting anymore?" At the time, I wasn't doing either. And to have someone in your corner that wants you to explore the things that make you who you are, right? Acting doesn't define us, but it's just it's part of our DNA. For me, it's just like restaurants. It's just a passion. It's just acting, restaurants, pop culture. That's me. And so having her in my corner has been a big deal. And then her daughter, who's now 16, is a beautiful young actress, and she's remarkable. She's so good. And now the three of us have been to New York a couple of times, Broadway, off Broadway. She's toured NYU. and I got to give her a lot of props. She's inspired me to get back into it. And I have talked to my oldest daughter, Hadley, who I think is an actress. And I'm like, I just want her to explore it. I just want her to just explore it because she's got it in her. And to your larger point that you made a moment ago, I think just some of the qualities that you can get from training and learning how to be an actor, those attributes you can apply to things in real life, just like you talked about with listening. You know, when I learned that acting really at its core, if you're doing it right, at least in this particular philosophy of acting, is listening and reacting. And to do that and watch yourself become a better actor and a better scene partner and everything else, and all of a sudden you're a better interviewer and interviewee, and you're a better podcaster, you're a better person because you're listening to people better. So I take that with me as well. But I am going to get back into it. In fact, I'm interviewing next week because I live between Houston and Dallas now, but my primary residence is here in the Houston area. And Pastor Ernie Bosby. I was with them 20-something years ago.
God, I remember them from when I was in Houston. It's been a long time since I've heard that name.
They're still rocking it, and so I'm talking to them next Thursday. I got new headshots. They got my reels, so I'm gonna throw my name back in the hat, and just for fun. And to your awesome husband's point, that's what I'm looking for. Is I just want to go and book, and we're sitting around. We're just talking about kids. We're talking about life. We're talking about the art of acting or whatever. We're not talking about. So I was with this person. I did this, and I auditioned for Spike Lee. I'm going to L.A. next week. I got this friend. He's a writer for this. Like I can't handle that BS anymore. I was in LA last year. Jen and I went for a few days, and we had a blast, and I still love LA, but I'm like, I could never do this game again here. Like we were coffee shops, bars, everywhere we went. She's looking around. She's like, is everybody in this town like an actor or producer? I'm like, yeah. You have no idea. Like you can just hear it. Like, you know what I mean? Like I can't do that. I'm done with that nonsense. But to Joe's point, like if I can book a job and we can just sit around and just talk, man, that's cool.
Well, Rick, I appreciate you taking time to talk with me. I wish we had more time. I have a sales meeting that's starting in 5 minutes, which is where we go and we role play and we bring in things that I've learned in the acting world about active listening and stuff like that. But it's fun.
Well, you're a dear friend. I love your family, and you're also an awesome agent.
Thank you.
You are. I mean, you are amazing, and we the Shew family appreciate you.
We're glad to have
much.
you. Thank you. How can people find you? Tell everybody where they can find you. I know there's lots of places. Tell them the goods.
Well, I'll plug the show. So go to Friends Work Pod it's because Friends from Work is kind of Friends Work Pod is where to find us on Twitter, on Instagram, on Facebook. Just follow us, iTunes, Stitcher. We're all over, podcast, YouTube. Hit us up and just have some fun with us. We're just geeking out, so hopefully it's contagious and you enjoy it.
I got to catch up with The Mandalorian so I can jump back in. The doctor scene, it was the doctor episode, man. It killed me. I was like, what is happening? And then
that was very Andor-esque.
So anyway, thank you so much.